Hello everyone, so today it's still 8-2. We are still learning about ellipses, writing equations, and I have a few more examples to talk about today. If you want to follow along, you can go to page number 648 in your textbook, and I'll be doing example number 3 and 4. Actually, just number 3. Number 4 it's different than that. Anyways, let's get started. So number 3. All right. So what do we have? So we are supposed to write down an equation for ellipses, which we know the major axis has endpoints. So major axis, endpoints, which we call vertices, we have at -2, -1, and 8 and -1. These are the endpoints of the major axis. And what else do we know? Whose minor axis has a length of 8 inches or centimeters or whatever you want to call it. So the minor axis is 8 units long. All right, that's what we know. So we need to write down the equation. First thing, which I really recommend you doing it, just labeling the stuff you know. So major, when I say major, is that A or B? This is A, so we know letter A in the equation. Minor, so that's going to be letter B in the equation. And I hope you remember, now we are doing ellipse equation with translations in it. So means you have to adjust H and K in the equation. So I know this is definitely going to be X and there would be Y. So now I know there would be H and K with X and Y. Okay, how would you know where that A would go? Is A gonna go under y-axis or x-axis? How would you decide that? For that, I really recommend you plotting endpoints of the major axis. Again, plotting would help you a lot, so please do so. Because otherwise, just by looking at that, I know a lot of people can do that. I guess that's the reason I'm saying graph it first and then figure that out. Let's plot major axis. I have -2. -1, which is here, +8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and -1. So these are the endpoints of the major axis from -8, -1 to 8 and -1. So by looking at this horizontal line, I can tell that my major axis is going to be x-axis, so that A number would go under A-axis or x-axis, my bad. This is A squared, so B would be under Y, and this is going to be equal to 1. Now I have my equation there, kind of like rough format of that. Now I'll be just plugging in numbers in there. Okay, do we know H and K? So H and K, how would you find that? Basically, H and K is nothing else that's just going to be the midpoint or the center point here. So this H and K could be found by using foci points. You could either use co-vertices or you could use vertices and just find their center point. That's going to be H and K. I repeat, you can find midpoint of two foci. You can do co-vertices, you can do vertices, and just cut those points or just find the center point. That's always going to be the center point, okay? All right, so I know -2, -1, 8, and -1. I have to find the half of that. You can literally count all those boxes and find the half. You could do that. Or there's another equation which could be useful tool. It's called midpoint equation. How do we find midpoint between any two points? So remember, x1 added to x2 divided by 2, that would be the x midpoint. y1 added to y2 divided by 2, that would be the y midpoint. Okay, -2 added to 8 divided by 2. So what's that? -2 added to 8 is 6, and divided by 2 is 3. So your x coordinate would be 3. And -1 added to -1, which is -2, divided by 2, it's going to be -1. So basically that y coordinate just going to stay the same. So the midpoint is at 3 and -1. So that's nothing else. That's just H and K in this equation. I'm just going to plug these numbers in the equation here. So I would just put, let's replace H and K. So H is 3, so it would be x minus. Remember, we take opposite. So K is -1, so this would become +1. Okay, almost there. So we still have to find A and B. Okay, since we already know major axis is the x-axis, so my minor would be the y-axis. So, and I already know the y-axis, the total length is 8 units. But remember, we just look at the half. So we just look at the radius for that. So total length is 8. Half of that would be 4. And 4 square would be in the equation. So this b square, we already know b square going to be 4. And then square would be 16 here. All right, I have most of the stuff ready except a square. What is that? So do we know how far we go on the x-axis? Since you already know the midpoint of this axis, you can literally count boxes on both sides or just one side and square. That could be one thing. Or you can just find the midpoint, or I would say just adding the total distance. So basically, you're going from -2 to +8. How many units you go in total? We go from -2 to +8. Total, we have 10 units. And what would be the radius? One-sided length. So 10 divided by 2 and square would be 25. So that would be just another way. Or you could literally count those boxes. So from 3 to 8, how many units you see? 5 and square would be 25. All right, so that's my first example. I repeat, please graph it. I know it's just going to be time consuming if you do it, but I guess it's worth it if you do so, okay? Here comes the next example. I have, again, you still have to write down the equation. Equation is missing. So what do we know? So we know foci points are at -2, 11 and -2, -1. And my major axis is 14 units long. So that's what I know for sure, okay? First thing, I really have to understand major and minor. Or we could just start off with labeling A, B, and C. Foci, what is that? A, B, or C? It's letter C. Major, is it A, B, or C? It's letter A. So far, this is what we know. Now, at the same time, I recommend you writing down the equation first. So let's write down the equation. I have X. It would be H. It would be Y with K. And it's 1. And we don't know where the letter A would go. So for that, I would plot my foci points first. Foci. -2 and 11. So -2 and +11. 11 is here. -2 and 11. -2 and -1. -2 and -1 here. This is what I have. So after plotting these 2 points, I know my major axis is going to be y-axis. I hope you remember foci is always on the major axis. So since if I connect these points, I know it's a vertical line, so that's going to be my major axis. So the A value, letter A, would be under y-axis. So this is going to be A. And I repeat, guys, I know this is kind of like confusing. It's a lot of stuff in one problem. So that's the reason I try going slow. So I write down the equation, I label everything, I graph at the same time, and then I'll keep plugging in numbers. Right? So that way you can keep track of stuff you needed, still stuff that's still missing, so you could do that. Okay, so now let's start solving for the rest of the stuff. I already know my major axis is 14 units long. Major axis, which is y-axis here, which is 14 units long. So what do you think? Do we still take 14? No, we take half. So half would be 7, square would be 49. So I already know this value under y would be 49. Okay, next step, I need to find h and k. Just like last example, you need to find the center point. So center point can be found by using foci point, find the midpoint. You can find co-vertices or you can use vertices, either or. So I already know my foci point. So let's find the midpoint. You know, -2 would stay the same because midpoint definitely going to be somewhere in the middle here, right? So -2 would stay the same. But if you still want to add, you could do that. -2 added to -2 divided by 2. That would be -2. All right. Let's find the y coordinate. 11 added to -1 divided by 2, it's 10 divided by 2 is 5. That's the midpoint. And what is that in the equation? That's h and k. So let's plug it in. Let's replace this h and k with these numbers. So -2, I would take the opposite. +5, I would take the opposite. Almost there. So the only thing that's missing is b squared. So how would you find b squared? Since a is there, c is there. So this is where we need that other equation. C squared, a squared minus b squared. Plug it in. Do we know c? So c is like, okay, again, that's the radius for foci points. I know the center point. Let me erase this circle first. Okay, so the center point, let's label that. It's at -2 and 5. Oops, my bad. Gosh, what did I do? My bad. Okay, -2 and +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the center point. How far you go on both sides? So that could be one thing. You can literally count those boxes. Or I can find the entire distance, which is, if you go from +11 to -1, how many units you travel? We go from 11 to -1. We have total 12 units. So half of that is 6. So that would be 6 and square. So this is 6 and square would be 36. That's your C value. What's A in the equation? It's 49. Solve for B squared. So I would subtract 49 both sides. It would be 3 and it would be 13. 13 is equal, -13 is equal to -b to the second, divide by negative, so b squared is equal to 13. Do I need to take square root? No, I do not, because for the equation what I need is b squared, the value itself. So I would just take this number and plug it in here. So let's erase that and plug it in, and that's my equation. So that's how we do it. I repeat, few things. What I want you to do is, first thing, make sure you label each one, like label A, B, and C, whatever is given in the problem. Next one, I want you to graph, kind of quick one, rough sketch, so that you can understand the major or minor axis. And the last one, I want you to write down the equation, and then it would be easier for you to replace every single variable with the numbers you know. All right, so that's kind of like quick idea about that. So yeah, this is pretty much all. Thank you.